Good morning, everyone, and I am sure all of you are also so excited to hear from our second speaker for this morning. He teaches history at DLSU Manila. He is a BA and MA history graduate and a PhD student in UP Diliman. His master's thesis is on Imelda Marcos's governance of Metro Manila. He is the author of the widely disseminated paper, Torture, Human Rights Violations During the Marcos Regime. He is also the author of the books Bonifacio, Ang Unang Pangulo, and Bayani Biographies, Andres Bonifacio. He was an original bottom liner in The Bottom Line with Boy Abunda, a historical consultant of history with Lord, and the teleseries Ilustrado and Katipunan. And he is also the host of the Xiao Time segment at PTV4. He's one of the most active public historians on Philippine television. Let us all give a warm welcome to Professor Michael Charleston Xiao Chua.
Makasaysayang umaga po sa ating lahat. Binabati ko ang lahat ng mga guro natin, lahat ng mga estudyante dito sa Social Science Club ng Centro Escolar University. Lalo na yung si Ren Eidan Fernandez na napakatagal na nung kinuha akong speaker. Mga ilang buwan na to actually. Hello, shout out sa mga bumabati sa akin. Hindi ko kayo mababati lahat.
Hello.
Hello po. Si Julius. Hello po. Hello. Hello, Charlene. Charot. Anyway. Ganito. Tanggalin mo yung share screen. Ako mag-share screen. Ano ba? Tanggalin yan. Yan. Siyempre, bago ako mag-share screen, gusto ko makita muna ng malaki yung mukha ko. Kaya ako muna yung magsasalita. Hindi muna ako mag-share screen. Para malaki yung mukha ko. Mamaya na natin palitin. Nagbibiro lang ako. Represent na ako. Teka lang window. Teka lang mga kaibigan. Teka lang mga kaibigan. Ano tayo? Okay. Alright. Kaya mga kaibigan, nakikita niyo ba yung aking sinishare screen?
Yes.
Okay. Basically, ang tanong lang ng aking presentasyon, ang martial law lecture ko ay mahaba, okay? Ang martial law lecture ko ay 3 oras. So, hindi natin gagawin yon. Gagawin ko lang yung isang bahagi nun. At ito yung tanong na, ano ba ang tunay na dahilan ng proklamasyon ng Batas Militar? Bayan o kapangyarihan? Diba? Parang General Luna, bayan o sarili? Bayan o kapangyarihan? Titingnan natin yan. Yan yung pinakatanong. Kasi kanina na Lainey Sir Vic, nagpapasalamat ako. Honored ako kasi madalang lang kaming magkasama sa isang webinar ng isa sa mga pinaka hinahangaan at ang tawagan nga namin sa amin ay Irog Victores. Kasi loves namin ng isa't isa. Sometimes we have different opinions pero a lot of times we agree. And a lot of times we share a lot of itong mga interests namin, lalo na dito sa Marcos years. At ako nag-agree fully doon sa lahat ng kanyang mga sinabi. But he also left us a lot of questions na pag-iisipan din natin in the course of this this talk, no? But anyway, yun na nga. At isa doon, yes, it was in the bounds of the Constitution that Marcos declared martial law. He had the power to do it. And there is no doubt that it was legal. Meaning, ang usapin na lang dito is what was his intention of declaring it. Kasi pag na-unlock natin yon, ay maiintindihan natin bakit nangyari yung mga nangyari. At bakit hindi, kumbaga parang although may mga magagandang nangyari sa martial law, ay bakit in the end, para siyang nakasama. Ano yung pinaka-root nung dahilan? Was it really to save the Republic? Or something else? Let's look at that. So muli, maraming salamat po sa Social Sciences Society at binabati ko kayo sa inyong History Month celebration kahit na po hindi na po History Month ngayon. Joke. Okay, subscribe po sa ating YouTube page, Xiao Chua, And by the way, hindi ko po nadagdag dito, may TikTok na po ako. So every day, nag-upload po ako ng 1 minute na isang history para naman mapakinabangan din natin yung TikTok, no? So, subscribe to Xiao YouTube, follow me on Facebook, and TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. May websites po ako for my history writings and also for photos if you want to have photos ng mga iba't ibang history, shall we say, iba't ibang pangyayari sa ating kasaysayan na pwede nyo magamit sa inyong pag-aaral. My readings are also in bangkanixiao.wordpress.com. Alright, so ito yung sinasabi na yung basically pagka nag-argument o nagkakaroon ng arguments about martial law, pangunahin dyan, yung martial law was actually necessary because democracy was in peril in 1972. Titignan natin yan. Ibig sabihin, mag-zoom in tayo dun sa panahon na yon, at least 3 years before 1972 happened, which is 1969 to about 1970. Okay, sige. So, before I go to those events, kailangan balikan natin yung TV address. Kasi, remember that we know about martial law. We teach it. I've read the proclamation itself, but the television address was very important because yun yung narinig ng mga tao noong September 23, 1972. But unfortunately, hindi siya masyadong na-highlight. It's only a few passages in documentaries. What I did was last September 23, that was the anniversary of the broadcast, binasa ko ng buo sa Commission on Human Rights YouTube sa Facebook page nila, and hanapin niyo po sa YouTube yung Xiao Talks reading of the statement of President Marcos in the Proclamation of Martial Law. Hanapin niyo po sa YouTube yon. It's about 20 minutes, and yung 20 minutes na yon, doon niya sinabi lahat yung dahilan kung bakit niya pinroklama yung martial law. So, tingnan natin mabuti yan, so, mababasa lang ako ng ilang passage, para lang makita ninyo. My countrymen, as of the 21st of this month, I signed Proclamation number 1081, placing the entire Philippines under martial law. This proclamation is to be implemented upon my clearance, and clearance was granted at 9 o'clock in the evening of the 22nd, last night. According to Marcos, magulo yung panahon na yon. Ang kanyang sinasabi ay basically ang kanyang sinasabi ay yung NPA, New People's Army, at yung Communist Party of the Philippines ay lumalaganap na sa Pilipinas. So, may mga numero siyang sinasabi dito. The armed elements of the New People's Army under the Communist Party of the Philippines, Maoist faction, have increased to about 10,000, which includes regulars as well as farmers in the daytime and soldiers at night. This is an increase of 100% in a short period of 6 months. So in 1972, tumaas daw yung dami ng NPA. At naging 10,000 na daw sila. Okay? So ito yung sinasabi. At meron tinatawag ding front organization. Maniwala ka, parang ngayon lang ito. So, sa sinasabi ni Marcos, may NPA at may kakampi yung NPA. At yung mga front organization daw na ito, it has increased its mass base to 100,000. The front organization's operations have increased tremendously. Example of such front organization is the Kabata Makabayan, KM, the most militant organization of the Communist Party, which increased its chapters from 200 in 1970 to 317 up to the end of July 1972, and memberships from 10,000 in 1970 to 15,000 up to the end of July this year. So, may sinasabi pa siya yung SDK, Samahan Demokratikong Kabataan, and all of that. So, meron pa daw ang NPA na BRCs at BOCs. In addition to the barrio organizing committees, they have also organized the barrio revolutionary committees. So, ibig sabihin pupunta na sila sa mga barrio. At sinasabi niya malakas ang mga NPA sa Luzon, sa Isabela, Zambales, Tarlac, Camarines Sur, Quezon, at sa Mindanao, sa Lanao del Sur, Lanao del Norte, Zamboanga del Sur, at Cotabato. Liban sa communists, sinasabi din niya na ang dami-daming mga tinatawag natin na dahil sa communist threat na ito, marami daw businesses na nagsasara, kidnapping, smuggling, extortion, dumadami daw, and all of that. So, kumbaga, aside from the communists, pinaghalo-halo na niya lahat that the society is sick. Yun yung sinasabi niya sa kanyang State of the Nation address. I come to speak of a society that is sick. So sick, it must either be cured and cured now or be buried in a deluge of reform. So, yung reform na yun yung martial law niya. So, ito na yung justification niya sa lahat ng nangyari ng martial law. And sasabihin mo, yung martial law hindi necessary. Saan mo hahanapin yun? Sa primary source. Itong primary source. Di kapag sinabi mong pumunta ka sa primary source, di ibig sabihin, justified ang martial law. Sinasabi ko sa inyo, hindi sapat na tumingin ka sa primary source o doon sa eyewitness account. Kailangan tumingin ka sa maraming primary sources. At timbangin mo, it's not enough. It's not enough. ENAP. Okay? So, represent tayo ulit. Abindo. So, yung sinasabi natin, mga kaibigan, kailangan tumingin ng iba pang mga testimonya. Alright. So, tandaan natin, ano ba yung konteksto niyang communist insurgency? No? At mamaya may mga bagay pa na nasa proclamation na titignan tayo. Okay, 1969, tandaan natin na yan ay panahon ng eleksyon. Okay, eleksyon ng second term. Tama si Tito Vic, second term ni Marcos, first time ever since Manuel Quezon in the history of the Republic na na-elect ang isang presidenteng nakaupo to a second term. Si Magsaysay sana yan, pero natigok bago ang eleksyon. So, anong nangyari? Ibig sabihin, popular si Marcos, yes and also maybe, kasi napakanaraw nung election ni 1969. Serging Osmeña, anak ni Sergio, no, ay siya yung kalaban ni Marcos. Marcos only won with a very small margin, and the historians agree that Marcos actually bankrupted the Philippine economy and the Philippine coffers by, since siya yung nakaupo, doing something that is not right, which is to support projects as a form of electioneering. Kasi presidente siya so nagpagawa siya ng mga project. So, at a disadvantage, of course, yung opposition at that time, which was the Liberal Party. Now, but Marcos was elected, and that is why a lot of people were saying that was the dirtiest election because of the overspending that happened. Aside from yung mga dagdag bawas, na noon nangyayari na yan. But yung overspending of the election bankrupted the economy, which brought down the value of Philippine peso from about 4 pesos to 6 pesos. Okay? So, ano yan? Yan ay isang factor. The other factor is that, since it was election year, Marcos has, of course, yung mga corruption charges against Marcos, yung mga tumatanggap sila ng kickback, kaya maraming infrastructure projects, and all of that, ay lumilitaw na noong mga panahon na yon. Now, the other context, of course, is our world events. No? In 1969, that was already the time of the hippie movement against the war in Vietnam. The young children are actually asking for change around the world. So, halimbawa, if you're going to look at the United States, nandyan yung civil rights movement at that time. Nandyan yung Ban the Bra, Burn the Bra, the Women's Liberation Movement. Diba? Nandyan na yan noong panahon na yan. And, of course, anti-war, Di ba yung hippies, yung mga women's liberation, civil rights. It's the whole world that was actually asking for change. The young people were starting it. So the Filipinos got wind of that era. Kasi nung panahon na yon, nagpapadala din si President Marcos ng humanitarian mission na peacekeeping sa Vietnam. Na parang ang dating, sinusuportahan natin yung war in Vietnam to the PhilCAG-V. Kaya nga, meron itong picture na ito, Leave Vietnam, sabi ng mga aktivista. So the young people were going to the streets, they were protesting all sorts of problems in society, not just Marcos. American intervention at that time, neo-colonialism, that was Soviet Socialist Republic and their satellites. So yung mga tinatawag na komunista.
Ayan, mukhang nagkaka-problems po ang ating speaker sa kanyang internet connection. So let us just wait for him to go back or to return to our Google meeting. But before that, you may start sending in your questions po, or you can try writing them down already so that mamaya po pag we start our open forum, we can easily access and read your questions.
Hi, I'm back.
Yan.
Ayan.
Was I turned off
Great,
because
you're
I was
back.
talking about communism? Is this censorship? I'm joking, of course. Okay, balik tayo. Alright, ganito. Again, by the way, just a disclosure, don't red tag me because I'm not a communist. The farthest that you can say is that I'm a socialist. I believe in the equal opportunities for all, diba? And equal, shall we say, opportunities to acquire wealth. No? Meaning lahat. Kailangan magkaroon ka na, and you do that by education. Okay, that's that for me. And yan ay ginagawa din sa Europa, no? But anyway, communism is attractive kapag mayroong repression. Communism is attractive kapag mayroong kahirapan. Kasi ang vision ng communism is pantay-pantay ang lahat ng tao. So, tandaan nyo, kung wala ka nang makain, yung lupa mo ay hawak ng iba. Saan ka kakapit? Di ba? Yun ang either magsimba ka, kumapit ka sa simbahan, di ba? O kumapit ka sa kung sino man yung tutulong sa'yo. And in the countrysides at that time, yun yung mga komunista. They were there. And this was 1969 was the time of the establishment of the New People's Army. So, all these problems are now, you see, it's a very complex situation. This is very not easy to explain. But all these problems, yan lahat ngayon yung context kung bakit ang gulo ng sitwasyon. Magulo, quote-unquote, magulo, noong 1969. Okay, tandaan nyo mabuti ha. Yung rally na pinakita ko kanina, yung mga kabataan doon, Marcos was swearing sa kanyang ilang term? Second term bilang presidente. December 30 Rizal Day. Alam nyo kung ano nangyayari nung panahon na yon? Nagrarally yung mga kabataan doon sa Manila Hotel. Grandstand ng swearing in. The Vice President of the United States, Spiro T. Agnew, was a special guest. So parang ito na naman, parang simbolo ito ng pakikialam ng Amerika. Nandito yung VP nila. So, nagsisigawan yung mga tao, hey, LBJ, how many kids did you kill today? Yun ang nakita nyo, may ganong nakalagay dun sa poster, dun sa placard. Hey, LBJ, how many kids did you kill today? 1969 was also the time na, tandaan nyo, Marcos and all these pro-Marcos now are lumping all activists into one group, which is sila yung mga komunista. But remember that at that time, they were not all communists. There were, in fact, a lot of factions in the student movement. The two major ones were what we call the moderates and the radicals. Eventually, they will become the National Democrats, the radicals, and the moderates would become the Social Democrats. Socialist, democratic socialism, social democrats, or whatever that blend of thought. So, magkaiba ang kanilang program. Sabi ng mga radicals, kailangan baguhin ang sistema ng lipunan. And in fact, kung ikaw ay radical, like, far left, revolution ang sagot. Pabagsakin mo ang sistema ngayon para mag-create ka ng bago, na pantay-pantay ang lahat. But in the other side, you have the Social Democrats, most of them from Ateneo and other schools. No. We should not destroy the society. We should just reform it. Okay? So, again, parang ngayon, lahat ng kalaban ng gobyerno, komunista daw. Hindi totoo yun. But you see this kind of creating one common enemy that would be the target of everything is a playbook that was played in 1969. Naintindihan natin? Okay, sige. So, yan yung context, nililay ko lang so that you will understand the things that I'm going to tell you about. No? Na ito, paspasa na lang ito kasi hindi naman ako, I will not cover the entire martial law period. I will scare Eidan Fernandez that this will be 2 hours. No, I'm joking. Sandali na lang ito kasi nalay ko na yung foundation. So, isang malakas na tinatawag nating radical ay yung tinatawag na kilusan ng kabataan, ay yung kabataang makabayan na si Jose Maria Sison sa mga founders nito, who eventually created the Communist Party of the Philippines, which eventually created the New People's Army. So, ito yung nagbasagan sila ng muka, yung mga militar, tsaka yung mga aktivista, noong December 30, nung inauguration ni Marcos, 1969. So, tandaan nyo, 1969, papalo ngayon yung 1970. After the election, laging may first State of the Nation address, no? A few weeks after. So, ganyan din kahit sa panahon natin ngayon, ano? So, after the swearing in, there would be a State of the Nation address, and Marcos delivered the State of the Nation address on January 26, 1970. Okay. The people at that time, yung mga radicals at yung mga moderates like Edgar Hopson, sila yung moderates, the radicals, so sila Joma, sila yung hindi si Joma mismo, kasi si Joma was actually in the mountains already at that time. But yung mga kapanalig nila are already planning a huge protest. Now, I don't think there was a protest as big as this for the State of the Nation address before this. Ngayon, yan ay, kumbaga, parang part of the ritual na yung rallies kapag State of the Nation address. But at that time, that was one of the first big ones. And nagsama yung magkalaban na aktivista. Yung moderate tsaka yung radical. So, ang tinatawag natin dito, so ito yung nagdasal si Father Pacifico Ortiz. Siya yung president ng Ateneo de Manila at sinabi niya, Lord, we pray for a nation at a trembling edge of a revolution. And outside the Congress building, which is now the National Museum, ang yun yung City Hall ni Yorme, there were 25,000 people outside. 25,000. And tingnan nyo kung gaano sila kalapit sa pintuan. That was already the presidential car. And ito yung mga tao. So ganun kalaki yung crowd at ganun sila kalapit sa venue. Oh? So Marcos delivered the State of the Nation address. Well, because of the dictatorial tendencies, hindi pa diktador si Marcos dito, no? But because of the so-called dictatorial tendencies, remember that at that time, Southeast Asia ay punong-puno ng diktador. No? Hindi ako nagkakamali. Hindi ko alam kung si Suharto na yung nakaupo, pero Indonesia, diktadura yan. Singapore, diktadura. South Korea, diktadura. So, yung Asia was, ruled by dictators, and people are saying, Marcos, even if we're the bastion of democracy, might be the next one. So, merong picture si Marcos na nilagyan ng Hitler na bigote, no, para magmukhang Hitler, no? And then you have the democracy is dead dun sa patay yung demokrasya, kabaong, itim na kabaong, and yung paper mache na buhaya. Oh? Now, I tell you something about this. Ito yung maganda yung dito, yung buhaya. Dati, ngayon pala, halimaw yan na noy-noy, halimaw na Gloria. Pero dati, lang yan, paper mache na cute na buhaya. Okay? Alam niyo yung kabaong, may context yan. Kasi nung yung tatay ni Marcos ay tumakbo sa pagka-congressman, natalo siya ni Julio Nalundasan. Tapos si Julio Nalundasan, nagparada sila with 2 coffins. One is the presidential candidate Aglipay, the other one is Mariano Marcos. Nagposisyon sila with 2 coffins na yung kabaong na yon represents the death of their career, political career. So nanginsulto yung Nalundasan kay Mariano Marcos with a coffin. So eventually, of course, we all know that night, Julio Nalundasan will be dead habang nagtututbrush binaril. Of course, ang pinagbintangan dyan si Marcos. But that's a long story. So insulto kay Marcos na may coffin na patay ang demokrasya dito. That was like a direct attack on him. So paglabas niya ngayon ng Congress, nakita niya yung kabaong yon lumilipad na papunta sa kanyang direksyon kasama ng mga bato, kasama ng mga kung ano-ano. And that was Marcos there, no? Nasa ilalim, pinoprotektahan na. Pasakay sa kanyang kotse. So magulo. Ang gulo-gulo. Si General Ver, yan yung kanyang driver bodyguard, no? Ay yan ang kanyang magiging yan yung kumbaga parang ililigtas siya ni General Ver. Yan yung kanyang talagang ihinarang yung kanyang katawan. Pinasok si Marcos sa kotse. Pagpasok sa kotse ni Marcos, na-realize niya, wala si Imelda. So lumabas pa ulit si Marcos para lang hilahin si Imelda. Papasok ng kotse. Tapos umalis sila. And that night was just pitch battle. Pag sinabi mong ganon, yung militar, lulusob, tapos atras ang mga militante, yung mga militante eventually lulusob ulit at nagkaroon na ng gulo. Ang tinatawag natin ng mga social democrats noon, o yung tinatawag nating moderates, umalis na sila actually. So na sina Edgar Hopson, umalis na sila. Nung na-realize sila, nagkagulo pala, yun yung nangyari. So, ito yung medyo nakakatakot dyan, kasi yung ibang aktivista umaalis na sa pamamagitan ng jeep, talagang pinapalo pa rin. Napakadugo nung gabing yun. Ito nga, si Judy Tagiwalo, yung may-ari ng legs na to, pinapalo pa rin ang pinapalo. Kahit napasakay na sila ng jeep. So, yan yung, may kanta nga sila nun kasi tawag dyan, Metropolitan Police Command. Ang kanta nila nun, Metrocom, may helmet at may truncheon, Metrocom, may tear gas at may Thompson, palo sa ulo, palo sa likod, palo sa tuhod, palo sa paa, palo ng palo. Inayo, mamamatay din kayo. So, ang kantang yun is based on Yellow Bells. Da, 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 da. So, it's a famous song. So, alam niyo naman humor ng Pilipino. So, kinakanta nila yon sa mga pulis dahil sa kanilang karahasan sa pagtugon. Now, of course, if you remember that date, this January 26, 1970. Okay, tandaan nyo yung araw na yan. 4 days after, January 30, Edgar Hopson, moderate, president ng Ateneo, pumunta kay Marcos, nakipag-negotiate sila, mga student leaders, kasi sabi ni Marcos, if the students are asking for reform, I am actually on their side. I want to change society. So Marcos invited all these people, all these student leaders, and nakipag-dialogue sila kay Marcos. Sabi ni Edgar Hopson, Sir, can you promise us that you will not run for us? You will not change the Constitution and run for a third term? And Marcos was saying, oh, all right, I am going, I have no plans of running for a third term. And then sabi ni Edjop, Sir, can you sign this commitment to the Filipino people? No, nagalit si Marcos. Who are you to tell me what to do? You are just a son of a grocer. Isa ka lang anak ng may-ari ng grocerya. So, ibig sabihin, Marcos already investigated on Edgar Hopson. Natatay niya ay nagtitinda sa grocerya. So, yun yung parang subtle pag-feel niya na, you know, I know you. But before the meeting could finish, they were all evacuated because outside, the radicals were already storming the palace. So, binato nila ng palasyo, binato nila ng bato, binato nila lang kung ano-ano, ang gates ng palasyo. And then, merong isang fire truck na gusto silang bombahin, dinidisperse sila for dispersal, niliberate nila, quote-unquote, niliberate nila, at ipinush nila ito doon sa gate ng Malacanang. Pag-push ng gate ng Malacanang na ganyan, bumukas yung gate ng palasyo. And of course, there was an eerie silence according to those who were there. And then nagpaputok na ang Presidential Guard Battalion at that time. So, yun na yung nangyari. And then again, there was a pitch battle, nagtakbuhan, naghulihan, nagkasakitan, 4 po ang namatay na estudyante. Hindi ko na masyadong i-detalye, no, yung mga susunod na mangyayari. Those times were called the first quarter storm. Magulo. Napakagulo. And then, of course, there was the Diliman Commune na yung mga estudyante, naaawa dun sa mga jeepney driver, tumataas ang presyo na lang. Sinamahan ngayon yung mga jeepney drivers on their boycott. So, anong nangyari? Ito na, nagbarikada yung mga taga-UP nang bawal kayong pumasok sa UP campus. Kasi, nagkahulihan sa dorms eh. So, nung nagkahulihan sa dorms, wala silang search warrant, tinirgas yung mga dorms, pati yung mga babae, ano, tinirgas sila yung mga at may mga kakilala ko, in-interview, nakasama sila doon, natirgas. So, naliligo sila, nakatapis lang lumabas kasi tinirgas yung buong dorm. So, dahil nagalit yung mga estudyante, hinarangan yung sarili nila sa loob ng campus. Sinarado nila yung campus. Yung professor campus na Marcos, math professor, may daladalang baril lagi ito eh. Ayaw siyang papasukin, nilabas yung baril niya, binaril niya ng shotgun yung isang estudyante. At namatay. Si Pastor Sani Misina. At dahil dito, yung Diliman Commune, nangyari, 9 days yan, ng February 1971. So 1 year after the first quarter storm, 1970. Okay? Sinarado nila yung buong UP. Senatorial elections din noong 1971, so Liberal Party ng kalaban versus Nationalista, si Marcos, nagrarally yung senatorial candidates, proclamation rally sa Plaza Miranda, August 21, 1971. Okay? So, sa proclamation rally, si Ninoy wala pa kasi siya yung pinakahuling speaker lagi. Hindi siya agad nilalabas. Kasi siya yung pang-excitement eh. Para maghintay ang tao, hindi pa lalabas si Ninoy. Para magstay sila doon sa rally. So, wala pa si Ninoy. Nagsimula yung proclamation rally. Yan, sina Jerry Rojas, nandito si Mayor Bagat Singh eh. Sino pa yung iba? Si Janos Menya, at marami pang iba. Si Salonga, Senator Salonga, etc. etc. Now, ano nangyari? 2 granada po, habang nagpa-fireworks display, ang inilagay sa entablado. O hinagi sa entablado. At nung sumabog po ito, around 9 people dead and 100 wounded. So, I'm sorry, please close your eyes if you have triggers. These are violent footage that I want you to see, I mean pictures. which tells you and just want to magnify the situation at that time. Okay, now, 1971 yan. We now go back to January 28, 1970. Bakit? Gusto kong makita nyo to kasi apparently, Marcos had a diary which he started during his second term, beginning of second term. So a few days after he started, he wrote this already. This was 2 days after binato siya sa Congress. Okay? So this is the Marcos diaries. And I will read them because gusto ko malaman nyo kung ano talaga yung reason bakit dineclare ang martial law. Dahil dito, kasi nakita nyo, magulo talaga yung sitwasyon. 1970, 1971. In fact, after 1971, Marcos, after the Plaza Miranda bombing, Marcos suspended the writ of the habeas corpus. And anyway, just look at this, okay? Sabi ni Marcos, 2 days after the Congress demonstration, if we do not prepare measures of counteraction, they will not only succeed in assassinating me, but in taking over the government. So we must perfect our emergency plan. I have several options. One of them is to abort the subversive plan now by the sudden arrest of the plotters. But this would not be accepted by the people. So, isang choice, ngayong magulo na, hulihin na natin sila habang nagsisimula pa lang. Pero sabi ni Marcos, hindi ito papayagan ng tao. Okay, next paragraph. Anong kanyang plano ngayon? We could allow the situation to develop naturally. Then, after massive terrorism, wanton killings in an attempt at my assassination and a coup d'etat, then declare martial law or suspend the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus and arrest all, including the legal cadres. Right now, I'm inclined towards the latter. Ano sabi? Sabi, we could allow the situation to develop. Hayaan nating lumaki, lumala ang sitwasyon. At kapag gusto na nila akong patayin, magkakudeta, magkaroon ng massive terrorism, magkaroon ng mga patayan, doon ko idedeklarang martial law. Bakit? Bakit hindi ngayon? If you want to save democracy, why don't you do it in January 28, 1970? Simple. If I want to be perpetuated in power, this is the easier way to it. Yun po. If I want to be perpetuated in power, this is the easier way to it. See, hindi po ako nagsabi niyan. Bakit hindi mo i-save ang democracy habang nagsisimula pa lang ang gulo? Because I want to be perpetuated in power. Hindi po ako ang sumagot ng tanong ko. Si Pangulong Marcos mismo sa kanyang diary. And then, he was beginning to see visions. After 1 year, wala pa rin yung massive terrorism niya. March 6, 1971, Saturday, sabi niya sa kanyang diary, naririnig daw niya to, this is your principal mission in life. Save the country again from the Maoists, the anarchists, and the radicals. This is the message that I deduce from the visions that I see asleep and awake. Subordinate everything to this, God seems to be saying to me. And you are the only person who can do it, he says. Nobody else can. So do not miss the opportunity given you. So ito po mga kaibigan, may mga naririnig na siya ng mga boses na nagsasabi sa kanya, ikaw talaga ang magdedeklara ng martial law. Ikaw magliligtas sa bayan. And 1971 yan. The next day, he writes again about martial law. So martial law was occupying his thoughts. And he said, if and when I declare martial law, it will become necessary not merely to assume greater powers, but to impose what is referred to as martial law in its severest form, or in its technical senses, that of the will of the commander, unlimited by any restrictions from statutes or the Bill of Rights. Unlimited martial law na walang restriction from the Bill of Rights. The severest form of martial law, the will of the commander. Maliwanag po yan. Yan ang gusto niya ipatupad na martial law. And then, of course, alam na niya kung ano yung gagawin niya. by September, pagkakanyang dineclare ang martial law. Take over public utilities, impose censorship, curfew, limit assembly, etc., 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 etc. So, iniisip niya itong lahat. Pero tandaan nyo, itong makikita nyo, bakit hindi pa niya dineclare no Plaza Miranda bombing? Bakit may hinihintay pa siyang tamang panahon? Bakit sinuspend niya lang yung privilege of the writ? Bakit nag-practice pa siya? Kasi pag sinuspend mo yung privilege of the writ of habeas corpus, pwede kang iharap sa korte, ay pwede kang hulihin nang hindi hinaharap sa korte para kasuhan at kahit walang warrant of arrest. Yun ang ibig sabihin nun. Pero hindi pa rin niya dineklara martial law after the Plaza Miranda bombing. So anong hinihintay niya? May hinihintay pa ba siyang mas malaki? Eh di ba ang gulo-gulo na nga nung sitwasyon? Kasi apparently, yung student demonstrations that followed were not as big as first quarter storm or the Diliman Commune. So, parang, kumbaga, kontra-tiempo. May mga, of course, there were protests. Pero tandaan nyo, kahit nung mga sa US, nung mga around early 1970s, pa-wind down na rin yung yung demonstrations doon against the war. So, what was happening? Parang hindi nangyayari yung gulo. And then nagkaroon ng mga bombing sa Joe Department Store. Pero nung nagkaroon ng bombing sa Joe Department Store, na-link ito sa isang militar. So parang ang dating, gumagawa ng gulo ang militar para i-deklarang martial law. We do not know. But what we know is, I believe that he should have proclaimed martial law in 1970 noong nagkaroon ng first quarter storm. Pero, eto nga tayo, nag-iisip pa rin siya. Bago ko ipakita to, hindi ko na pala sinama. But anyway, there was a part of the Marcos diary wherein he went to Baguio, he talked to God, parang ganon, he had the spiritual exercises with the Jesuits, and he realizes that martial law was needed. So he consulted God. But this was April of 1972 na. Alright? So, let's leave it at that. Now, was it necessary? Ito na yung naging key. There was a big incident in the proclamation of martial law that is always cited. And this was the MB Karagatan. Ano yung MB Karagatan? Supposedly, the Chinese Communist Party was supplying arms to the New People's Army. No? And na-intercept nila ito sa Isabela. This was July 4 and 5, 1972, the landing of the MB Karagatan. So ito yung MB Karagatan, nahuli yan at ito si Juan Ponce Enrile while inspecting the yung mga nahuli, napakaraming replay. Oh. So ito ay sina Victor Corpus sana yung sasalubong diyan, aside from the fact na si Victor Corpus dating taga PMA ay ni-raid yung PMA armory at kinuha yung mga baril, 'di ba? Ay eto, napakaraming baril. 3,500 M14 rifles and 900 were recovered by the Armed Forces of the Philippines. May report lang na 3,500. 900 yung na-recover nila. 30 rocket launchers of the M40 variety, only 6 were recovered from the area. Pero ito, yung sinasabi dito, parang, nakalusot yung iba, pero the mere fact that the MV Karagatan was intercepted was the reason why I do not believe that martial law was necessary. Because na-intercept nga nila nalaman nila nakuha nga nila yung mga baril So, yan yung sinasabi natin dito. According to Ambassador Manuel Yan, if I want to talk to another opinion at that time, or if I want to get another opinion, a primary source who knows as much as Marcos about the situation in the country, if Marcos was the commander-in-chief, I would go to the chief of staff. Ambassador Manuel Yan was chief of staff of the armed forces from 1968 to January 1972. He was the lolo of Idol Manuel Yan. Rico Yan. So sabi ni Manuel Yan sa isang interview, Kakaunti lang ang conflict sa Mindanao noon. Hindi naman malalang sitwasyon dyan sa New People's Army na kayang sugpuin naman ng ating armed forces through small unit actions only. Tayo ay nagtatag ng units of the armed forces against demonstrations. Tayo ay bumili ng anti-riot equipment to be able to quell the student unrest peacefully. Hindi kailangan ng martial law. So because of this opinion, Manuel Yan was appointed ambassador to Thailand. But ako, I think that he was correct. But of course, yun na nga. Whether or not it was needed or not, ang tanong ko na lang talaga, why did Marcos not declare it in 1970, January, or during the Plaza Miranda bombing, which he would have had a real reason. So anong nangyari? Kailangan silang gumawa ng reason. And one reason they felt was to stage an ambush of the Defense Secretary Juan Ponce Enrile. Oh, so inambush siya September 22, and according to Manolo Quezon, that's when Marcos signed Proclamation 1081. The real time he really signed it was the morning of September 23. After he already arrested everybody. So, nagyari na yung arrest that night, dineklara yung martial law. Parang tumaya yung, alam mo yun, parang tumaya, naglaro kayo, tapos, alam mo yun, parang hindi pa nagsisimula yung game, nahuli ka na. So, ganun yung nangyari. So, si Ninoy, si Diokno, etc. Again, sabi ni Tito Vic, there was no television on the September 23. He wanted to say September 21 because anything that is divisible by 7 is a lucky number for Marcos. So, there was a time that he said he actually declared it on September 17. So, may 7 na naman. But it was actually really September 23. But he have to adjust it to become his lucky number, September 21. So that's why I do not really want to commemorate it September 21. It was September 23. So, cartoons ang pinalabas dyan, konti na lang po, malapit na matapos. At actually, nung walang TV, walang radyo, walang dyaryo, that was pinalabas yung mga wacky races. And yung cartoons na yan, parang ganyan di ipapalabas for the many years of martial law na puro cartoons. Para lang kasi it was safe, di ba? Hindi, kapag nanonood ng cartoons ang bata, tahimik siya. The mother and father of the Filipinos, si mommy at si daddy, siya nang mag-aalaga sa atin ngayon. And so Marcos appeared on television at 7:10 p.m. And he said he did it to save the Republic and form a new society. But again, going back to 1970, he did it to perpetuate himself to power. Why? The number one problem he wanted to solve was communism. And totoo yun, tama si Tito Vic, maganda yung reaksyon ng bayan sa martial law. Kung hindi man maganda, tumahimik lang sila. Kasi hindi nila alam yung totoong sitwasyon eh. Hindi nila alam kung ano nangyari. But what happened was, sabi nga niya, the public reaction throughout the Philippines is welcome to martial law because of the smooth, peaceful reestablishment of peace and order and the hope for a reformed society. In fact, most everyone now says this should have been done earlier. It is indeed gratifying that everyone now finds or discovers I am some kind of a hero. There is nothing as successful as success. Was it? He was congratulating himself too early. Okay. Ito yung medyo complicated ang nangyari, pero kailangan makita ninyo, if he wanted to solve communism, which was, he said, 10,000, some estimate would only be less than 1,000 in 1972. They were not as strong. They cannot take over government. Why did the NPA grow in the years after martial law was proclaimed? That eventually by 1986, they have 25,000 cadres. That the Americans, the senators of America, were saying Marcos was the number one recruiter of the NPA. Again, the simple answer is this. If you have repression, kung meron kang repression, kung meron kang tinotorture, pag meron kang inaapi, this is a magnet for people to go to the mountains. And this is exactly what happened to a lot of yung tinatawag nating reformists. Ibig sabihin, hindi sila radical, but were radicalized because of the abuses. Kasi na-torture sila, wala na silang pupuntahan, kinapitan nila, kabundukan, NPA. So, it was, although not everyone who fought against Marcos were communist or NPA, lumakas talaga yung NPA at yung mga organisasyon na sumusuporta sa kanila. Yun yung naging problem. That's why, 1983, Ninoy Aquino was so worried that even if he was friends before with the NPA, he did not want the NPA to win. So, he wanted to go home and said, talk to Marcos and let's have a return to democracy. But again, if it did not solve the NPA problem and it just grew bigger, then I guess in that sense, martial law was an unnecessary pain that happened to the Filipino people. I guess that's my answer to that. And again, as we always say, and Dudong Nemenso, I heard Dudong Nemenso, former president of UP, said this. He was an old party communist before. Sabi ni Dudong Nemenso, in order to kill an idea, you have to make it, you have to allow it. Anong ibig sabihin nun? In order to kill an idea, you have to allow it. What does it mean? The more you suppress ideas, the more they become attractive. Kasi masarap ang bawal. Masarap ang bawal. So, what's happening today? What's happened in martial law, 1972, wherein you suppress communism and it just grew, should be a lesson for the leaders of today. And I tell you this, the communists are not strong. But you will only make them stronger if you do not learn the lessons of history. Makasaysayang araw po sa ating lahat.
Alright. Maraming salamat po, Professor Xiao, for giving us bird's lens perception in regards of 1972 martial law.
I would just like to share, guys, our Facebook Live has reached 3,873 people, 1,338 engagements, with over 55 shares and 125 comments. Ayan. And guys, we are now proceeding to our open forum. For those who have questions, please send your queries either through the chat box if you are viewing on Google Meet, or on the comment section if you are from our Facebook Live. Again, we are now proceeding to our open forum. For those who have questions, please send your queries either through the chat box if you are viewing on Google Meet, or on the comment section if you are from our Facebook Live. While we are waiting for the questions to come in, we would just like to ask po, we're curious, why is the Voltes 5 bad during the martial law?
Do you want Tito Vic to answer it? Nandiyan pa si Tito Vic? Nandiyan pa?
Anyone from you po? Nandito po ba?
Yeah.
Si Tito Vic, naabutan niya yun eh. Napanood ko yung 90s na eh, yung rebroadcast.
Yeah.
Tito Vic, what do you think?
Well, it wasn't actually just also Voltes 5, kasi isang yan eh. That was one entire week of one entire week of cartoons of showing robots. So I think I still can remember the schedule. No, Monday it was Monday. Tuesday was Tuesday was Rimos. Wednesday was Mazinger Z.
Mazinger Z.
The Thursday was I forgot. Friday ang Voltes 5. No, and then Channel 9 picked it up with other robots series and everything. It became quite popular. In fact, it became quite popular. Tapos, I mean, by 6 o'clock, tulad ng sinasabi ni Xiao, ano, na talagang nasa bahay na lahat ng mga bata kasi naabangan nila dahil um, hindi na sila lumalabas. So, manonood na sila. But the storyline, especially of Voltes 5, was about the toppling of a government by the resistance of a group of people. And eventually, I don't think Marcos was watching Voltes 5 at that time, but there were, of course, some apprehensions among some probably some of his subordinates. And eventually, may bumulong sa kanya na it's detrimental daw to the moralities of the children and everything kasi it was violence and everything. And it was eventually abolished. The company Questor International was told to pull out the entire, not only Voltes 5, but the entire series, the robot series. Kasi each and every cartoon series had almost the same format. Fighting an enemy, toppling an enemy. You have big hero, with a group of young yung pa isa, young men and women, ang mga bida, hindi matatanda, who would fight the existing establishment. So may mga nagpanic and eventually it was abolished. I remember na nung araw na inabolish yun, pag uwi ko, I was in elementary school at the time. Siyempre, takbo sa bahay ulit, 6 o'clock, pag bukas mo ng TV, pag bukas ng TV, wala yung cartoon. And it was eventually replaced by, I think dito ngayon pumasok yung mga hindi niya nalabot to the evening variety shows. Yung mga kinormat ng Wawawi and everything ng gabi. Dito ngayon nagsimula yung mga, kasi yun ang ipinalit. In fact, nabuo lang ang Voltes 5 nung when it was revived in the 90s. Ito yung naabutan nila Xiao. No? But,
pero sir, kulang pa din. Kulang pa din nung early 90s. Hindi natatapos yung Voltes 5. Natapos lang siya nung sumikat si Isko Salvador, yung dating doon. Kasi ginawa nilang team song yung Alien. So, yung Voltes 5, Alien, di ba? So, anong nangyari? Ni-redub ng Channel 7 at buo na siya, natapos siya.
In fact, when it was revived, tentative pa yun kasi they tried to show it sa cinema. Lumabas sa sine yun, it was very grainy kasi it's TV format yan . But, nabuo na siya finally. Kaya when it was first shown talaga nung 80s, bitin na bitin kami kasi naputol sa gitna. Hindi namin alam kung ano nangyari kay Dr. Armstrong. So, malaman lang namin na namatay pala siya doon sa ending ng Voltes 5 in the 1990s. 10 years after it was shown na.
Tapos, I just want to add na I talked to Selena Cristobal. Actually, she corrected me na parang Marcos apparently wasn't interested in Voltes 5. Yun pala apparently, no? But sabi niya sa akin, and Marcos actually can use the Voltes 5 ending for his benefit. Kasi pwede mong sabihin na yung bad people were the bad oligarchs before and the new society is the Voltes 5. Diba? Actually, kayang gawin ni Marcos yun. But apparently, ito yung sinabi sa akin ni Selena Cristobal, Polly Cayetano, the Catholic Women's League head, was doing op-eds in the newspapers saying that the robot series, not just Voltes 5, were violent. Yung morality. Yun na yung morality and all of that. So, ewan ko, gusto ko nga dalhin si Polly Cayetano from 1978. Gusto ko siyang dalhin dito sa panahon ngayon. Baka atakihin sa puso yun. I'm sure. Miss Mabuti.
Yan, thank you po. I think we have a question from Facebook. Ayo?
Yes. Question po from Mark Ivan M. Gomez for Sir Xiao. Do you think President Marcos committed a so-called hyper-presidentialism for using his powers excessively as vested by the Constitution?
I'm sorry, I'm not enamored with terms from the West. Kasi hyper-presidentialism, I mean, it can be construed in so many ways, no? But you just say it simply, diba, that he went beyond what he should have done. Kasi, you know, ang tingin ko sana, if he was able to, you know, minimize the human rights violations and did not plunder, maybe it could have gone well. He was an intelligent man. He was a genius.
Yes.
Number two, I think that in 1978, he should have stepped down. That was the perfect time for him because the economy was up. 1976 to 78. Pababa na yan by 79 because of the oil shock crisis. So, yun lahat ng world events na yun, naka-apekto, na sumama yung sitwasyon, and then he was solving 1970s problem, and he was solving 1980s problems in the 70s. He was solving 1980s problems in 70s style. Kasi sa 70s, nung panahon na nung 1970s, mag-build ka, walang problema. Mag-build ka, may pera tayo eh. Mataas ekonomiya natin eh. Pero nung bumagsak yung ekonomiya natin, mag-build ka pa, anong nangyari sa atin? Hindi nagkanda utang-utang tayo. And you will see that yes, Marcos brought us to the highest point of our economy by 73 and 76, if I'm not mistaken. But his continued administration brought the economy down. They did not know when to stop. Yun yung problem. If he knew when to stop, then hindi sana umabot. Alam nyo, nung martial law kasi mismo, hindi naman talaga pinapatay yung mga kinukulong eh. May mga namamatay, of course, sure. But if you look at the bantayog ng mga bayani, ang mga namatay doon halos late Marcos dictatorship, 1983 to 1986. Mga nakulong yon, pero eventually papatayin din sila by 83 to 86. Mas lumaki yung killings, maraming kinulong, pero mas malaki yung killings nung end. So again, you know, when a regime is dying, when a war is finished, when a war is going to finish, mas maraming patay. Actually, yung nakakatakot doon eh. Pag patapos ang isang crisis, mas doon marami ang tinatamaan. So, World War II, ganyan din yung nangyari. Martial law, ganyan din yung nangyari. Oh? So, yun ang kailangan natin makita dito. We should learn these lessons because this pandemic, diba, we should resolve this very well. Because we do not know what can happen to us. Hindi natin alam kung palala pa ito bago matapos. Diba?
Thank you so much po, sir.
We have a question po for Dr. Torres here po in the Google Meet. Sometimes I feel my efforts in telling people about how the late President Marcos abused his presidency are all in vain because even now, Marcos apologists are aggressive in defending the late president. How can we educate those people who deeply believe in Ferdinand Marcos? Is there a way we could change their belief without sounding rude to them?
If you make a very big effort to change, you will be frustrated.
Mm-mm.
No? Because tulad ng actually ginagawa namin like kami nila Xiao ngayon is the facts are there. The contextualization is there. We're not just going to go around preaching to everyone because as long as you preach, there will be people who will be listening and not listening. But here's the vital thing. You have to keep the idea alive. Yun ang sinasabi ni Xiao parate. You have to keep the idea alive because once you always keep the idea alive, then they will start to listen. Because if you force something down their throats, they will resist.
Tama.
So sinasabi namin, ayan, you will encounter Marcos apologies and everything. Ang problema kasi, whenever we talk about sa mga sinasabi ng mga Marcos apologists, some of the facts are true. Yan ang problema. Yeah. No, some of the facts are true. And I'll give an example. When the Enrile memoirs came out, di ba, yung memoirs si Juan Ponce Enrile and everything, and he started to explain what happened during martial law and everything, and so on and so forth, may lumapit sa akin na taga-Lasal at sinabi sa akin, Sabi niya, Vic, you should write something about the memoirs because they are all lies. Sabi ko, you cannot tell me that they are lies because he was the one who experienced it and explained it. So in short, Foxy and Rile yan. No? And it's the very thing that is that he experienced and saw at that time. Oh, I'll give another example. Sinasabi parati natin sa kwento ng regarding dito sa Lopez's, ano? That when the Lopez's were placed in jail, no? Napilitan ibenta ni Inyong Lopez yung Channel 2 and everything. Tapos, after martial law came, bilawi daw nila lahat. Now I have to ask you this. How come Enrile had a letter signed by Inyong Lopez about the transfer of Meralco to the government? This was before martial law. No? He was telling, Inyong Lopez was telling the government to at least subsidize, from what I remember, Inyong Lopez was telling them to subsidize at least the Meralco because they no longer can, they can no longer maintain it. Ano mangyayari ngayon? No? What am I saying here? Facts will always be there. No? Interpretation of facts has to happen. But they have to be interpreted in whatever way. I'm not saying the right way or the wrong way because magkakasabulutan na naman tayo dyan. Facts have been interpreted in the right way, no? Because what is happening right now with regards to historical revisionism is selective memory.
Yeah.
And you have to look at the entire context of this thing. It's so hard to explain the entirety. Tignan mo si Xiao, 3 hours. Yung kaya lecture on martial law.
Buong martial law yun.
Buong martial law yun.
Kulang pa yun, ha?
Yung pa, kulang pa yun, no? But what am I saying? It's unfortunately a slow process because martial law itself lasted for 20 years. And you cannot remove it with just something like that. But you can continue spreading the idea the right way.
Tama.
Yeah.
Miss Masama, Miss Mabuti.
Yes
Pwede
po.
ba sumagot ako? Oo.
Sige po.
Kasi may tanong si Tito Vic kanina na kailangan natin pag-isipan na why are they back in power? Diba? But it's not just the Marcos family. Okay? Because we have to look at what they represent, which is a strongman rule. So we must go beyond the Marcoses. No? Kasi mga anak na lang yan eh. But the main idea itself that Marcos was effective as a president, diba, is based on the strongman rule is effective. Okay. Simple answer, I will try to simplify a very complicated answer. Okay. EDSA revolution, kasi na-realize naman ng mga tao when the economy was already shit, the lowest economy ever in the history of the Philippines since World War II by 1983, even before Ninoy was assassinated, and that was actually the context why he was going back, was that Marcos, anong tawag dito? People were, fed up because the economy was down, not because of human rights violations. Human rights violations are a factor, but they're not necessarily the driving force of why people were disenchanted and EDSA revolution happened. Lahat naman ng mga pro-Marcos ngayon nagsasabing nasa EDSA din kami. Diba? So they were really believing democracy was supposed to be kaginhawaan. That once Marcos was already out, there would be kaginhawaan. But what happened? This is what happened. We had democracy, we successfully restored it. But democracy was appropriated by the powerful for their own ends. That's the simple answer to why people were so frustrated with democracy and the justice system, for example, which people tried, of course, there are a lot of honorable people in the justice system, in the police, in the military, in the government. We're not singling out or we're not generalizing, I mean, but some of the powerful made democracy look like ineffective. And this is the reason why people were saying, 35 years after EDSA, hindi effective ang demokrasya. So it's not really the Marcoses per se, but the idea that we need a strongman regime. Why is Duterte still popular? It is because of this. And then, sasabihin mo, alam mo yun, yung, let me, saglit na lang to. Yung sinasabi natin na, parang sinasabi natin, mga Pilipino bobo kaya gusto nila si Duterte. Ang mga Pilipino bobo kaya gusto nila si Marcos. Alam mo, pag inunahan mo agad, ginawa ko yun eh. Ginawa ko yun noong 2015. Mangmang kayo, mga, kayo. Akala ko kasi sa Facebook, yung mga nagsasalta lang sa Facebook, sila lang yung maingay. Sila lang yung naniniwala doon. Kaya sabi ko, mga nagtapos kayo sa University of Facebook. Mga mangmang kayo. Eto, nag-show kaming mga matatalino. Author ni ganito, author ni ganyan. Ganun yung, that backfired. That backfired. If I speak like that, I am only speaking to the people who already believe in me. If I want to speak to the people who don't believe in what I'm saying, I have to respect them and the reason why they think that way. Not because they were stupid, but because of the historical forces that happened from martial law to today, including censorship, including the ineffectivity of democracy in some aspects of it. Diba? The still lack of human rights. Tama si Tito Vic. Nangyayari pa rin ngayon yung mga patayan. Nangyayari pa rin ngayon yung mga forced disappearances. Nangyayari pa rin ngayon yung mga yung kung ano-ano. So, how do you, yun yung kailangan yung may, you have to be nuanced eh. You cannot, tama si principal, si Dean Lucas. Sabi niya, nung panahon niya, naniniwala siya na si Marcos ay magaling kasi ang daming proyekto. Kapag yung taong yun, di ba, nabuhay ngayon at hindi niya nakita yung, o kaya nakalimutan niya, basta naghalo-halo na yan na naging ineffective nga yung demokrasya. Sasabihin niya, maganda pa yung panahon ni Marcos kesa yung sumunod. So, paano mo yun, kakausapin? So, ganito yung, ko ngayon, strategy ko ngayon. Not effective in a widespread way, but we are able to talk to people we want to reach. And what is this? Respect their narrative of what they experienced. And verify. Even say, yes, Marcos has done some good or very good projects, which I wrote in my email, the thesis. But, doon mo sabihin, now that I respect your view of what happened in your lifetime, this is what is the other side. Because history is when you put these sides together and read it. Alam nyo, pagka ang narrative ay demonyo si Marcos, wala siyang nagawang mabuti, that's disinformation. I'm sorry to say. Ang narrative na santo si Marcos, wala siyang ginawang masama, hindi siya nagnakaw, hindi siya nag-commit ng human rights violation, is also disinformation. And we should not only do this kind of, kasi inukil-kil natin masyado tong martial law tsaka si Marcos eh. Ba't di natin ukil-kulin yung ibang administrasyon? Di ba? So ganun, kailangan gawin natin to sa lahat ng administrasyon.
Yes po. I've also noticed po, if I can add to that po na parang people easily forget, like what you said po that, not only the Marcoses, but other political people also na they have committed something, but why are they still in power? And some people are easy to say that, po, santo daw po si Marcos and all that. And that's what I've noticed from my perspective lang po na other people easily forget. And what can we do po pag ganun?
Sorry, what's the question again?
Some people po are easy to forget yung mga nangyari po noon and they are easy to select kung ano lang po yung gusto nilang paniwalaan. Is there a way po that we can enlighten them?
Tito Vic, sagutin ko to saglit Nawala ba si Tito Vic?
Nandito
Nawala si Tito. Ay, nandiyan pa. We do not know kasi ganito. yung disinformation, nandyan naman talaga yan eh. Noon pa. Hindi bago yan. Yung forgetfulness, ako nga nakakalimot eh. Kaya nga kailangan natin ng kasaysayan eh. Kaya kailangan natin pag-aralan kasi ang tao nakakalimot. Pero ito sasabihin ko sa inyo. Ngayon may social media. Panoorin nyo yung tinatawag na The Social Dilemma na film sa Netflix. Maintindihan yung mabuti ito. Dahil sa algorithm ng mga tinitignan ninyo, the things that you most likely stop and look, kapag nagpe-Facebook kayo, lahat, ang gagawin ng Facebook, lahat ng ganyang klase ng content, yan ang ibobombard sa'yo. So, pagka nakikita mo, kunwari, lahat yung binabasa mo ay pro-Marcos, lahat ng makikita mo sa feed mo ay puro pro-Marcos. Ganon din kung anti-Marcos ka. Ganon din kung anti-Duterte ka. Ganon din kung pro-Duterte ka. Ganon din kung pro-Trump ka. Ganon din kung pro-Biden ka. So, ang problema sa atin ngayon, we do not listen to the other side. That's why we are like this. The social media had made us divided because we think that the truth is because lahat ng nakikita mo sa feed mo, yun ang totoo. Dahil hindi mo nakikita yung iba. Lalo na kapag na-stress ka at lahat ng mga pro-Duterte friends mo ay tinanggal mo sa list mo ng friends. Lalo kang maniniwala sa mga pinaniniwalaan mo lamang. Kaya ako, hindi ako nagdi-delete ng mga pro-Duterte friends ko kahit hindi ako maka-Duterte. Kahit hindi ako maka-Marcos. Ito, lahat naman tayo may bias. Sasabi ko na yung bias ko sa inyo. Hindi ako nagdi-delete ng mga maka-Marcos kong kaibigan. Hindi ako may stress sa kanila. Bakit? Kapwa ako Pilipino yan eh. Kapatid ko yan eh. 'Di ba? At sila nga yung gusto kong kausapin. Gusto ko, hindi ko sila i-unfriend para kapag ka-friends pa rin nila ako, makikita nila yung mga post ko.
Opo.
Di ba?
We have two similar questions here on Google Meet to no specific speaker po. In relation to oppressive activities during the martial law, what are your thoughts about the recent news about red tagging on anyone who simply criticizes the government? I think she is referring to the anti-terror bill.
Tito Vic,
Actually, ang joke ko dyan sa red tagging na yun, gusto lang yata ng General mamit si Lisa Soberano eh. Kaya ni red tag eh. Mula itong maganda ni red tag niya, no? Kumalat daw eh. Malaman daw ni Angel Oxin, tawa daw ng tawa si Angel Oxin eh. Ibabot daw sa kanya yung pinost kong yun eh. Na gusto lang yata niya mamit si Angel, kaya ni red tag. You know, but seriously, I don't know, the red tagging is so, it's not even martial law, it's so 1950s.
Cold War.
Xiao, di ba yung mga red tagging?
Anti-Philippinism.
Oh, that's
diba?
So 1950s pala kung pag nila magsaysay yan. And it's unless here's the thing for me, no. Unfortunately, this red tagging thing is one of the ways to cower the people, no? Because unfortunately, it will not be the military or the police who will arrest you for that. It will be civilian fanatics who will kill you for that. No, or unless these are underground underground people who are actually on the surface could be police, military. I'm not saying that they are police and military, no, but these are people who are eventually would take the law into their own hands.
Yeah.
I think because of this red tagging thing and everything, and because of this this thing that you're a communist or not, I think we entirely forgotten that nung time ni Fidel Ramos, the Communist Party of the Philippines was legalized.
Yeah, it is legal.
It was legalized. But then after Ramos, you have now Dumating kasi ang age of the age of terrorism eh.
War on terror.
That's why,
Yes.
kaya it became now, they were declared a terror group and everything, but no law has ever been passed here declaring the Communist Party illegal after it was declared. Unless I'm wrong, no? But that's why you still have they must admit that they are left. They have leftist groups in Congress and everything. It's because they were already legitimized as an organization. No? Kung illegal yan, di kasimpleng red tagging hindi na nakapasok yan. So what is unfortunately, what is red tagging now for me? Yeah, it's a remnant of the 50s, no? That was passed down, unfortunately. And what was amusing about this, our president is so anti-American. That was a legacy passed down by Americans.
Yeah.
And that's very ironic. No? And unfortunately, people believe it. It's because, tulad na sinabi ni Xiao, because of social media. No? It's so, probably if you want to do research, look at the period of the United States they call the Red Scare, which began in the 30s until the 50s. It's almost the same conditions. If you are tagged as a communist or a red, you're not allowed in government and everything. You will be investigated by the military and everything. No? And you can get condemned.
Yeah.
But hindi mo maaring makalimutan na as an organization, unfortunately, as an organization, the Communist Party is legal. The only problem is no one has questioned that in court yet. Wala pa lang question ng red tagging in court. No? Kasi takot mga tao lumabas as talagang red and admit. You know, until now, Joe Masison hasn't admitted that he was the one who created the Communist Party. It was only later that he although he did not admit that he exposed himself as Amado Guerrero. Yet he did not admit that. Not even once. Hinayaan na lang yung mga tao.
Armando Liwanag.
Siya na lang talaga ang bahala na kayo maniwala kung ako ito hindi. No? But yeah, just probably an answer to the question, the red tagging is dangerous. No? And what is frustrating about this, it is done by the guardians of the state. The state is not bad. It is the people who are supposed to be the guardians of the state who are the danger if they abuse their power.
Ako, can I very, very quickly,
Sure.
Importante kasi to dahil yung kasing mga left, quote-unquote, yung mga na-identify sa left, pinapatay kasi sila eh. Well, we do not know if there are soldiers who are killing them. Tama si Tito Vic eh. Hindi natin lang pwedeng vigilante or what. Pero once na ma-red tag, kaya nga, hindi ako nagtataka bakit sa totoo lang, red naman yung iba dun eh. And by the way, what is red? Diba? I mean, what is red? Hindi natin alam. Si Charlene nga, nakapula eh. Diba? What is red? Si Renz, nakapula. Oh. Ano ba yung red? Card-bearing member of the Communist Party, red ka na ba agad? Siyempre, yun yung sinasabi lang, red. Pero kung ikaw ay member lang ng isang organization na parang left-leaning, di ba? Red ka na ba agad? How do you define that? Ngayon, ng red, pati dilaw, sinasama na eh. Lahat kayo, komunista eh. Di ba? So, yung tagging of people is not healthy in a democracy where you must thrive in conversations and dialogue with different with different persuasions, including the communists. Yan ang ano dyan. And yes, I have to clarify, sinasabi Tito Vic, the NPA is illegal. The armed conflict. Armed yung armed component. But yung yung Communist Party supposedly illegal. 'Di ba? And because it's 'di ba? Kaso yun na nga na hindi ko rin masisi kahit yung mga left talaga ay nagdi-deny. Bakit? Kasi buhay ang nakataya eh. And parang ang dating sa akin, if you want to kill communism, why are you making it so relevant? Ayan, pinag-uusapan tuloy. Di ba tagal na natin kinalimutan ng mga komunista? Eh ngayon, pinag-uusapan na naman natin. Kaya ako, pag may troll ako, hindi ko na sila pinapansin. Hindi ko sila papangalanan. Bakit? Pagka may kaaway ako, hindi ko na papangalanan. Sisikat pa eh. So, bakit yung mga kaaway nyo na maliit, wala namang kakayahan, di ba, imbis na, di ba, tahimik na lang, eh bakit mo pinapansin? Pag pinansin mo, lalong lalaki. Yan ang lesson ng kasaysayan eh. Kapag ka tinarget mo yung mga yan, lalo silang may embolden, lalo silang lalakas ang loob na tama yung ginagawa nila. Lalong dadami ang followers nila. We should learn the lessons of history. To kill communism is to actually answer the problems that communism tackles. Poverty, the intervention of foreigners in our country, di ba? And elite democracy. Simple. Masama?
Yes, thank you so much po. And I think we have room for one last question po from the president of the Social Sciences Society. He wants to ask something.
Hello,
Hello.
po, Props. Hello po.
Hello po, Renz.
Ang question ko lang po, yung po bang the conjugal dictatorship po ni Primitivo Mijares is an eye-opener po para po sa mga gustong magbasa nito about the Marcos regime or another historical distortionism lang po from the author itself? Thank you po.
Okay. Can I answer? Sige.
Yes, ikaw muna.
Remember that all historical narratives have a point of view. Even Xiao, even Victores, even your teachers, kahit si Sir Hipolito, lahat may point of view. Lahat may pinanggagalingan, lahat kami. Diba? Kahit si Sir Julius de Leon. Diba? Lahat tayo ay may pinanggagalingan. So, ang kailangan mo lang tignan, anong pinanggagalingan ng source. Ibig sabihin, hindi lang pinanggagalingan ng source, pero yung pagkatao ng source mismo. So, si Tibo, may background siya. Si Tibo, mayroon siyang agenda. Bakit niya ginawa yun? Maaring manira kay Marcos, totoo yun, pero hindi necessarily na hindi siya nagsasabi ng totoo. No? Although, may mga sinasabi siyang mahirap i-verify. Yung mga chicks, ang hirap i-verify nun. Diba? Pero ang dami na niyang sinabi na na-verify na natin na totoo. Kasi, yes, you read Primitivo Mijares, but it's better if you read the new version. Kasi may footnotes, may mga clarifications. At i-compare nyo siya sa ibang narrative ng martial law. Kasi again, ang ina-advise nga namin, kapag ka nag-history ka, wag isang source lang yung gamitin mo kung napaka-contentious. Kung kunwari, buhay lang ni Mariano Ponce yan, o hindi naman, wala namang controversial sa buhay niya, wala naman sigurong problema. Pero pag napaka-controversial, you have to look at the sources na iba't iba. So, Primitivo Mijares is one eyewitness, but like all eyewitnesses, you have to put them with other eyewitnesses and you have to put them shall we say, you have to analyze them. So, ganun-ganun lang ano doon. So, yeah, like Bob Kuti, our good friend is saying, don't believe us even if we're historians. Diba? Don't believe us. You have to take everything with a grain of salt because you have to see the documents yourselves. But at kami at least, We're bound by our discipline to not, shall we say, not totally embellish or distort history. We can be wrong with details, kami ni Tito Vic. We're not perfect. We can forget some details, but at least the analysis of history is the most important thing rather than, just facts, because it's not just about facts. You go beyond the facts.
On my part, no, I have a first edition of the Conjugal Dictatorship, no, and I have the latest edition of the Conjugal Dictatorship. Yeah, it's basically the same. Tama si Xiao, no, na a lot of it was explained in the footnotes, no, because we are looking at the Marcos administration from one of the insiders,
yeah,
of the administration during martial law. And from what I remember, it was Tibo Mijares who coined that conjugal dictatorship. But when that first came out, and you can probably believe it or not, because Tibo Mijares did not have a good reputation.
Yes.
At that time. Hindi din maganda reputation niya. He was viewed as a corrupt newsman.
Yes.
During that time. And there was a story nga daw, kaya daw pinatay yan, is binayaran na nga siya para tumahimik. He ran away with the money pa. Tapos nagsalita pa din. No, kaya napag-initan talaga siya. But of course, that is all, yan yung mga panirang lumabas. Especially after the time he disappeared. You know? But what was valuable with regards to the conjugal dictatorship was that it was an insider story. But sometimes being an insider, you only get one side of that looking glass. You cannot see what's on the other side. No, and one of the most dangerous thing with regards to with historical studies, no? And Xiao also agrees with me on this. Do not get yourself caught in a he said she said thing. That if you have to counteract something, you have to have all the evidence to counteract it. Hindi pwede mo sabihin, ay hindi totoo yan, period. Ay mali yan, period. You have to have all the evidence at hand. No? Kaya talagang kaya nung unang lumabas yung conjugal, marami sablay because tama si Xiao, it cannot be verified. No? When did it come out? 10 years later, more than 20 years later, saka na lamang na totoo pala yung iba. No? So, yeah, based on the question of Renz, so yeah, it is a valuable study of martial law, but tama ang sinasabi ni Xiao, look at the new edition na lang. Because if you look at the first edition is a nice collector's item. You know masasabi ko, because, but you can use it also to compare what was written before and what was written now and what was corrected now, in order to get the full understanding. Ito yung sinasabi kong contextualization. But you have to understand, no? If you want to understand history, look at both sides of the mirror. Okay? Sorry, both sides of the coin, in order to understand it.
All right. Ayo.
Okay, sobrang ganda po ng ating discussion. Ed, palalim na ng palalim. We provide certificate of appreciation for Professor Michael Charleston V. Chua as resource speaker during the Social Sciences Society's History Month 2020 with the topic Militar Revisiting the 1972 Proclamation of Martial Law. Given this October 24, 2020, during the online symposium held at 9 a.m. via Google Meet. Signed by Dr. Lorenzo S. Hipolito, Advisor of Social Sciences Society. Signed by Ren Eidan Javier Fernandez, President of Social Sciences Society, and Dr. Carlito B. Olaer, of Vice President for Student Affairs.
Salamat, tinatanggap ko po ang inyong sertipiko at
Thank you
pagkilala.
po.
There.
There, so we have our documentation team. Yes. And 1, 2, 3. Okay po. 1, 2, 3. Ayan. Thank you so much po to
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you, Professor Xiao. Nakita
Thank you
naman
po.
tayo.
Salamat,
Thank you
Julius.
po.
May
Thank you po.
PHA conference, ha?
Thank you
Oy,
po,
PHA
Dean.
conference, ha?
Conference, ha?
Thank you po sa speakers. Dean.
Thank you po sa
Sir Renz,
ating
Sir
mga
Polito.
speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you po.
Ma'am
Thank you, Prof.
Lucas.
Xiao, Prof.
Sir
Victor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you po.
Congratulations to the organization.
Samot.
Thank you po, Dean.
Thank you po, Dean. Thank you po.
Samot.
Mabuhay
Mabuti,
ka
masama. Ayo.
Mabuhay ang
Thank
kasaysayan.
you po, Prof. Xiao.
At saka si
Mabuhay
D,
ang
nandito
kasaysayan.
ba si D?
Yes,
Yes.
po.
Yes po.
Katsi, pinapakamusta ka ng ate mong kaibigan ko.
Ay, tsaka po
Salamat
pala
po.
sa ating mga graduate school po na pumunta po dito ngayon na kasama po ni Prof. Victor. Maraming salamat po sa pag-attend. Thank you po.
Salamat
Thank you
po.
po. Sana
Salamat
po
po
marami
sa
po tayong symposium.
Salamat po sa lumayas para makapasok ako.
Bye-bye po. Bye-bye po hanggang sa muli po mga
Bye-bye.
professors. Bye-bye po.
Maraming salamat.
Thank you po. Asa na yun?